Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharron Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. Born in Armenia to astrophysicist parents, today's guest grew up surrounded by giants of science. Never imagining that she'd become one herself, she studied biophysics and later landed in the lab at Scripps, where she helped lay the groundwork for what would become Zeposia, a billion-dollar drug. Today, she's tackling a rare neuromuscular disease from every angle: diagnostics, drug development, and patient hope, with the same fierce curiosity and moral conviction that's guided her whole career. In this episode, she opens up about imposter syndrome and the hard shift from academia to entrepreneurship, and why passion and purpose are more important than pedigree. So please welcome today's guest, co-founder of GrittGene Therapeutics, Lusine Abgaryan. Hey, Lucy, good afternoon.
Hi, Sharron. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. How's your Friday going?
It's going well. It's a sunny Californian Friday.
Oh, I've already spoken to somebody today from California who was telling me what a lovely sunny Californian day is. And I'm like, oh, it's drizzly and here in New York. But
sending some sunshine from
please,
here.
yes, please send some sunshine my way. I'm a big fan of the sunshine, but we're not really seeing very much of it here in New York at the moment. But there's time, I guess. What part of California are you in?
Currently, I'm in Pasadena. We moved our company to Pasadena almost a year ago.
Okay. From where?
So I started from San Diego. And then we started the company in Los Angeles. The first location was Torrance in Harbor UCLA campus. And then we expanded to Pasadena.
Oh, okay. Of everything you've said there, all I know is San Diego. I actually had the pleasure of attending the Bio Conference in San Diego last summer, and that was my first trip to San Diego. And I have to say, I sort of fell in love with that. I could really see myself there once I have enough money and to not live in a box.
I don't blame you. And my husband, till this point, whenever people are asking when you moved to LA, he said, we moved to LA. We haven't moved to LA, so he's in complete denial about our situation.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is where I live. Bless you. Well, listen, I know that you have a fascinating story, a little bit of work on your bio and checking you out. But how did it all start for you? How did sparked your love of science and set you off on your journey?
That's quite interesting. This is something that is being asked a lot recently. While I was born in capital city in Armenia, I grew up mostly in a scientific small town observatory where my parents were working. So my both parents by education were astrophysicists. Eventually, my father pivoted to computer science. My mom, till this day, she's a professor of astronomy and astrophysics. However, I cannot say that I was one of those that had science and the dream of becoming world-known scientists. Definitely not. I was just having fun. Math and science were given to me very easily, but I didn't know that anyone else doesn't have that. I was thinking that's normal.
Yeah, me, definitely not.
Right. And only now, again, reflecting, I'm understanding that I was privileged to see and meet world-class scientists and big mind giants, authorities in science at very early age. But that was not in life science. Most of it was in physics, astronomy, astrophysics. However, I went to this very special school, high school in Armenia, which the most similar would be like magnet or charter school in science, in STEM. And when I went to this school, I was surrounded by kids that were very passionate about science and math and STEM in general. After graduating, and I graduated, I was never type A student. I always was a troublemaker. And however, again, because things were being given to me easier, I graduated with a pretty good record and went to university to do physics for undergrad just because my friends were going there and I wanted to continue to have fun. I had absolutely no understanding what I want to do with my life. I succeeded there as well at university. As a matter of fact, Yerevan State University, a physics department, had a program that was very unique. It was called Honors Group. It was a cohort that was mobile cohort. Students were being only invited to that cohort based on their potential and their grades and professors' recommendation. In the history, I was the only girl to be invited to that cohort.
Wow.
And eventually, I think I started by age 19, because I went to university when I was 17. So by age 19, I started kind of feeling that the questions that are tickling my mind are regarding life. And I started reading different articles published internationally about life science. Back then, I didn't know that there is a term life science in general. And the closest discipline that I could specialize in was biophysics. So I did my undergrad in biophysics and molecular physics. And then I eventually did my master's and PhD in biophysics. So saying that I had interest growing up in science would be not honest.
Yep.
But eventually, I think the exposure kind of gave me that curiosity in life science, especially when I was approaching the first problems during my grad school, and I was looking at thermodynamic effects of DNA and drug interactions. My question was like, okay, I understand the energy. I can calculate the energy of these interactions, but how about in real life? Do drugs get all the way to the DNA? Do they penetrate the membrane? And what my supervisor was telling me, those are questions for biologists. Leave them alone. We are physicists. But that's when I started understanding that those are questions that I want to have answers to.
Right. So it was kind of, I mean, it was in your genes from conception, I would imagine, because of your parents, that there was always going to be some kind of science aspect to your world and to your life. And it was the part that was yours, I guess, is the part that's the life science part that you then applied to what's already in your.
Absolutely. I think all of these conversations that when I was growing up back in the day, they were sitting in our kitchen, smoking and having this conversation.
You were a troublemaker. You little disruptor, you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just being given some task to do, but definitely I was present in those very interesting, mind-blowing conversations that were happening in our kitchen.
Fantastic. Excellent. So talk to me about your time at Scripps.
Sure. So Scripps was supposed to be a pit stop for me. That's what I was planning because I was working on my thesis to finish my PhD.
Yep.
And when I moved to San Diego, this was because of my husband. He was from San Diego and he knew after graduate school he's returning back to San Diego. And he told me, you know what, in US it's a little different. You start having different interviews so that you get used to it. When you are done with PhD, you know how to proceed. And I went for interview. I ended up being hired. So that was not just an experience. I had only one. And I was very fortunate and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I was given. But it was hardcore biology, immunology, drug discovery, while my background was more on physics.
Right.
That was a transformational point for me, where I not only tried something new, but I fall in love with that discipline. And I started loving applied science, because what our laboratory was doing, the one that I have joined at Scripps Research Institute, they were doing true hands-on applied science. And the first project, when I came, the all excitement was that they found this drug that eventually was supposed to go to clinical trials. Now it's an FDA-approved drug. But to be at the origin of this excitement and having the exposure to that was definitely, again, one of the transformational points in my life.
And was it Zeposia that you were
Yes,
involved in?
currently it's in a clinic under name Zeposia. Originally, it started with a code name, then it was Azinamod, and then after going through two acquisitions, first by Celgene and then by Bristol Myers, eventually it went to clinic under name Zeposia for
And
multiple sclerosis.
what did that feel like to you, to not only be kind of scientifically involved in that, but personally as well? That must have been a real kind of, I've made it kind of. I know it would for me. How did that make you feel, being part of that?
I have to be honest, like I cannot say that initially I was like understanding the scale and the scope of it, right?
Right.
I was just doing my job in the lab. I was hearing this excited conversation of grown-ups, because I was significantly
You were just still a kid
and immature. Yep. And I was hearing like different dramas going on, people trying to get information, like starting having the curiosity to start to check the stock market and like how the stock market is doing with the product, because it went IPO. And so at that stage, I can say that I was kind of understanding what's really happening. Then the first acquisition happened of that spin-off, and it was $7.3 billion acquisition. So that's one of the largest acquisitions for that early product to take place in general.
Right.
I think that kind of sparked a little bit of interest of like, okay, what's going on? Like, what is this all about? And then I was working at multiple different projects, and the two other projects that I was already working as a postdoc, one of them very much hands-on. I was doing the most of the preclinical pharmacology development for that. And the second one, I had intense involvement, spun off again from Scripps Research Institute. A new beginning started, new investments, and that's where I was more involved going and presenting about the data. I was a little more mature, I guess, at that point. So I was allowed to these rooms to present what I'm doing in the lab. But then I had to leave, and these serious people had to have a discussion regarding the company and moving forward. So I think all of this kind of had that accumulative effect. And then also learning, I don't like calling market the patients, but that's what from the business perspective, right? Understanding what type of impact these discoveries can have. It was definitely fulfilling. And interestingly, I had an offer from Monsanto, the other side of the battle, right? And I remember that I made a decision that I don't want to go. And it was like the salary was significantly different from what I was making. But that was the time that I was, you know what, doing something good, doing something impactful, meaningful, has much more importance to me than making more income, yet not being aligned with what you are creating.
It's having that being patient-centric rather than kind of dollar-centric.
Yeah. But I mean, at that stage, my decision-making didn't have a bigger impact. At that point, that was decision just for myself, for my peace of mind, for my behavior or my beliefs at that point. But eventually, that became a philosophy for me.
Yeah, but I think that things that become philosophies start with beliefs, don't they? I mean, you know, sometimes you have a belief and you're not even really sure why you have that belief. It's just that you just know that I guess it's like what's right or wrong. You don't know why something's right and something's wrong. You just inherently know. And then I think maybe years later in reflection, you have the luxury of reflecting back and appreciating what it was that you had at that time that you didn't realize what that conviction was.
Right, absolutely. I think, and that at that point, it might have been just like perhaps a fear also, right?
Yeah.
Because one thing that always has been consistent with me throughout years is that I want to go home and sleep peacefully. I don't want to think that I have done something wrong. If I have to think about it, it means I have to stop doing that. And in current world, unfortunately, there are so many different stressful factors that when we are given certain tools in form of knowledge and experience and expertise, we have the choice of using it for good or not.
Yep.
So I think at that stage, again, without this deep analysis, the choice was made that, you know what, sometimes just feeling good is important too.
Yeah. So is this the point in your life, in your career, that you stepped away from the kind of deep science and looked more at the entrepreneurial, tapped into your entrepreneurial self? Would this be about this time?
Well, I mean, I cannot say that there was exactly this point where it was the turning point, right, for me. I think it happened gradually, it happened organically in my life. The first entrepreneurial experience that I had, interestingly, not was even in a life science. It was a hobby that my husband had in our garage in San Diego that became a military contract organization. That's a project that we don't talk about. There isn't much to talk about. That was a successful project, but that was our first exposure to entrepreneurship. That's, I call, our failing point, even though financially we came out positive.
Right.
However, that's where we learned a lot of things. Like, I didn't know that you can negotiate. Like such a naive mistakes that were made. They were like, everything was done on very much intuition level. Yep. Intuition and being very careful. That's how the approach was. So that was, I think, my draft version of being an entrepreneur. And then eventually I started understanding that, you know what, I'm seeing solutions for different things, and people around me, and I was in an academic environment, I was feeling that people are not interested enough to go beyond what they are there for and provide solutions. But I was constantly seeing there are different solutions. But also I have one feature, which is I don't talk about something that I don't know the fundamental basis of that thing.
Right.
And that was the reason I decided to go back to school, do an MBA, and understand the business side of the things. Because in my career where I was, Scripps does not provide that progress, that path to eventually evolve towards the business side of the things.
To prepare you for...
Right. Yeah. So you don't even have an exposure on administration over there. It's a very framed and isolated and siloed type of organization.
Right.
From science perspective, brilliant science is happening at Scripps Research Institute. From organizational perspective, if you want to become something different, if you want to grow and integrate into new fields, that was hard to do at Scripps.
Right.
So, and I saw the only way of doing it is the education and new network with the education. And that's when I did my MBA at UCSD, and they have fantastic program, entrepreneurship, innovation, and corporate governance. That's the focus of this MBA program, designed for experienced professionals particularly.
Right.
I did that program, and I took part in a lot of offerings that university had to provide hands-on experiences. So I jumped onto those that eventually became advisory and consulting works for me. And I worked with Israeli startup companies. Again, the connection was made through University of San Diego. And I think that was the perfect learning school that I went through understanding the translational science, not only in life science, but in general,
Yep.
lab to market, how things are working, how someone with scientific and engineering mind can start seeing things from market and commercialization angle, and
Right.
also become the translator, because not everyone needs to do that in reality, right? So that's when it happened. And again, by serendipity, by stars lining up in a certain way, I met my first partner of the second company now.
Right.
And I have to say that my husband was always involved in all of this project,
Right.
because I know how his brain is wired, but he thinks completely differently. He's pure scientist. He doesn't want to deal with business whatsoever, but he has solution for everything. So
Which is always needed, isn't it? I mean, you sometimes from the pure science aspect of something comes the answer to life, or just,
absolutely,
love's life in the
absolutely.
universe comes from a purely scientific thought process at times. But you
Right.
took on the business mantle, right?
Right, right. So at this point, we decided what I learned also from business school, that it's very important to understand the strengths, the
Yep.
shortcomings, and do fulfill these gaps without being afraid to be surrounded with brilliant and smart people. That's
Yep.
the key. And my daughter is currently using that against me, saying, "You told me if you are the smartest person in the room, it's time to leave the room." So that's definitely the approach I started taking. I know what I can do. I know there are other things I can do as well, but if someone else can do it better and more efficiently, then please be my guest. Join the team, join the effort. Let's do that. Because the goal in general right now for us, after having 3 companies, is we have the luxury of actually doing what we love to do for people who really need it. Those are people, in this case, right now, people who are suffering from rare genetic disorders and they don't have enough attention for their problem.
So talk to me about this company that you have at the moment. What's the name of it?
So GrittGene Therapeutics, and we are targeting, or we are working on finding solution for rare neuromuscular disorder called myotonic dystrophy type 2.
Right.
To my knowledge, we are the only organization globally that is targeting this disorder as our primary target.
Okay.
There are organizations who are saying that after finding solution to this or that, we will apply it to this disorder. But
Yep.
as our main focus for directed solution, we are the only organization. When we started the organization, we were thinking to develop cell therapy, regenerative muscle cell therapy, for those who are suffering from the symptoms of this genetic disorder, because mainly when we were interacting with patients, they were saying what is bothering them the most is the mobility.
Right.
Eventually, we again evolved because we started doing very basic research on this disorder as well, from very complex point of view. When everyone is targeting this disorder as an RNA disorder, as a neuromuscular disorder of particular, like only on particular segment, we started looking at that in a holistic way, because again, our backgrounds are coming from different places. My background in science, Gore's background in science, who is our chief scientific officer.
Yep.
We started raising questions. What if this disorder is not a neuromuscular? What if it's an autoimmune disorder and the neuromuscular is just symptomatic
It's a
expression of
symptom
it?
of, yeah.
Exactly. Interestingly, our hypotheses haven't been rejected
Disproved
yet.
at this moment.
Exactly, exactly. And furthermore, there are certain clinicians who are seeing in a clinical picture the proof of what we were predicting.
Wow.
Which brings us to a point where we decided, you know what? It cannot be just a muscle regeneration. We need to have other solutions for these patients as well. So right now, what we are doing, we call it omics. So we are doing full transcriptomics, metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, lipidomics, full data science, basically, with these patient samples, aligning it with clinical data, coming with neuro-specialized clinicians, and basically recreating the picture, understanding where it comes from, how it develops, what are the triggers, which eventually will lead us to either repurpose existing medications in the market, which is the quickest solution.
Yep.
Not the best from the business perspective, but that's not our main goal. That means the patients that I have known, I saw them face to face. I can tell them, you know what, there is something you can do about your disorder. That's the most important at this point.
Right.
And then if there isn't perfect solution, to work towards developing new treatments, new drugs perhaps, or biologics.
Yep.
And last but not least, we realized that the diagnosis is the biggest problem for this disorder, as it is for a lot of rare disorders. And in reality, it's not as rare as we think. It's just the shortage of the diagnostic tool for identifying those patients.
Right.
So
you're coming at it from all angles then, from the diagnostics position to actually identify the patients who are suffering from this disorder quicker than before the real symptoms really start to show. And then hopefully with kind of a repurposed drugs solution to provide support there, whilst also undergoing clinical trials for your own drug, or is that still to come?
Well, I mean, right now we are just starting the animal trials.
Okay.
We are early on. The organization is 2.5 years old, basically.
Okay. So you're preclinical with it, are you?
Right. We are just entering animal study stage for the regeneration, for the cell therapy part. The part for the repurposing, it has a little longer road. So if we do it for one patient, it's a quicker way to do it.
Yep.
Because it's looking at very personalized molecular map and the clinical picture, it would be much more easier to address. But we want to make sure that the solution is generalized and the solution is something that will be accessible to everyone who is suffering. And you noted it greatly that we are approaching from different angles because we want the patients who are already suffering with the severe conditions have some solution that at least will slow down.
Yep.
If there are patients who are just starting, they can stop the progression. And those who know that they have this genetic modification and they are kind of in a wait of what will happen, they can basically prevent the symptomatic development. And with our diagnostic tool, we are hoping to be able to predict the prognosis. With these omics studies, we are hoping to identify the triggers. What are the triggers for this or that type of symptoms to evolve and progress? So yeah, that's basically because everyone deserves to have solution.
And hope. Because, even though if you can't provide a solution at that point, if one part of the process is working, you can provide hope for people who are at different stages of the disease. So that, I guess that at least helps whilst you're looking to get to the end result. Well, that's incredible. And for you, as you've continued on in this journey, what challenges did you face? What did you find coming from the academia world and that very kind of scientific world to now in the whole entrepreneurship, business aspect of the business? What were sort of the challenges that you faced in those, and how did you deal with them?
That's a really good question. So academia and industry, especially the startup industry, are completely different ecosystems. Yep. Absolutely. And I discovered it hard way. I didn't even know that this can be a question. And everything starts from very administrative level differences, operational level differences, and then scientific level differences, accessibility level differences. When you are working in a well-known academic institution, you say I'm from Scripps, and that kind of gives you a certain authority already.
Yeah, you don't need to say anything else, do you?
Right? If I'm going and I'm saying I'm from GrittGene Therapeutics, and people don't know from me from anywhere else, the skepticism is given, right?
Yep.
That's the number thing it's given.
Yep.
Also, I can bring just like few different examples. When I was working at Scripps Research Institute and I needed samples from patients to do certain things, I didn't know that's an issue. I would call someone who is our collaborator at medical center at UCSD and ask for cartilage tissue. And next morning after surgery, they would just send us the cartilage tissue. Getting patient samples became a nightmare. Just for example, the first material transfer agreement we did was with Stanford, and just one MTA signing took us 9 months. So here there is the part, there was definitely, I don't want to say definitely, but probably the skepticism was involved. Like, why are they doing this? It's like they were approaching us either we are crazy because we are targeting disorder that no one else is targeting, or we know something that they don't know. I mean, the
Right.
craziness the prevalence was higher for crazy.
Yeah. Let's go with crazy.
Yeah. But also, but they didn't have a proof also that we are doing something wrong, because we are not.
Right.
But the skepticism is given. I think anyone is starting a company, like being surrounded by skepticism, it's given. But also the other thing is that when you're in academia, you are getting paid and you can sit down, you do your work in 1 week or 3 months. It's not affecting your pay rate, or
Yep.
you're not incentivized to do your work differently. In startup, every penny matters. And the most important thing is time that you don't want to waste. So you are coming into this system where you are misaligned with you work in not just different time zones, you work in different time rates. So that's definitely another issue that we have faced, and not having all of your departments. So when you just start, you have to be your accounting, you have to be your legal, you have to be your payroll, you have to be your janitor services.
Yeah, it's like which hat's going on today, kind of thing.
Exactly. And there was a period of time where I was having more conversations with lawyers, for example, than science. So I was dreaming about going back to the lab at a certain point.
I was just about to ask you that. If you knew then what you know now, would you have done it? Would you still have done it?
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's still absolutely worth it.
Yeah. I don't have any regrets about what I have done. I have regrets about what I haven't done.
Okay. So what are you still to do? What's still on Lucy's list to accomplish?
From scientific perspective or from general?
Well, let's keep it from your scientific perspective. If you want to marry Brad Pitt or something like that, and but that's another conversation.
For that, I am very boring. Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot entertain.
So what's your plans from a scientific perspective?
Well, from scientific perspective, definitely like having this solution out, and my timelines were very ambitious. And so far, we have met those ambitious deadlines, which is sometimes I'm looking back and I'm like, can you believe where we were like 2 years ago?
Fantastic.
And starting from square one. But I think that is only possible because of the team. Whomever we hired, whoever joined us, had the same type of feeling of the ownership and what we are doing, the purpose.
Yep.
And we have made choices in the past: intelligence versus or knowledge versus personality.
Yep.
And we chose personality,
yep.
Sacrificing the knowledge and experience and expertise, because we are in an area where there are so many pitfalls, there are so many barriers, that if you are not all on the same wavelength, the knowledge can be obtained. We can put time to learn. But if your heart is not there, if you are not believing what you are doing and why you are doing that, you cannot modify that.
You're just going through the motions, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I come across that many times as a recruiter, which is my day job, and talking to CEOs and boards of who they want, and the focus that, they must have experience doing this and they must have experience doing that. And my view is, but What about the cultural fit? What about the passion? What about the belief in what you're trying to do? Somebody can have all of the skills in the world, but as you said, if they're not aligned with what the passion is, they're really kind of just going to go through the motions, right? You're not going to get that everybody in the same direction, pushing and pulling to get you where you want to be, which is what you've been fortunate enough to do.
Yeah.
So how long do you think, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what is your timeline to getting, are you as far as thinking this is when we're going to get this to a patient, or are you not thinking down there just yet?
Oh, I am thinking.
You got beyond that, have you?
I'm already seeing that.
Well, that's the way to do it. You visualize it and make it happen.
And this is interesting. I came across my very early interview it was very random interview that I was pulled out from an event and asked to give an interview that I was not prepared. I didn't know what questions they were going to ask. And it was 2022 October or September, where we just started the company, few months. We had our first scientific no founder hire in August. And they asked, so what are your timelines? Like when the patients will see any result? And I told them, my plan is in 4 years to have our first human trial. And it's not just ambitious. It's unrealistic if you look at the classical cases. And
it's about that.
And I don't know where that 4 came from. It was not planned, nothing. And now we were talking just recently, going over our roadmap with my team. And we were like, okay, this is the goal. Those are the new timelines and everything. And I said, by December, let's make sure we have the plans for the clinical trials. Like, let's push it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much aligned with what I blurbed in 2022.
Yeah.
But that was not planned. It's just like how, I don't know, the information was sent somewhere and then it just worked out. I don't know.
But just a lot of how you seem to have been your whole life is just, I just know. I don't really know how to answer the question. I just know. And maybe it's that belief and that makes things happen.
Yes. And I think here regarding the belief and also knowing that everything has a solution. And I have a little anecdotic story regarding that from high school. So my approach was, I think that kind of was a pivotal point too, that everything has a solution. One. And second, if someone can solve this, why not me? So those are the 2 points that kind of stuck with me. And this was because there was an exam. And again, I was in a high school that was STEM oriented, very strong in math. But there was a exam that across the country, everyone was taking that exam. And we heard that the last problem is very difficult. So my class left already. They finished and left. And we are a STEM school, which means for us, this is nothing, these problems. Like looking at that. And my teacher looked at me and he said, you're thinking too hard. Remember, this is for regular school. After that, in 3 minutes, I was out. So I started understanding that I program myself to this is going to have a solution or this is not going to have a solution. Is the solution easy or is the solution hard? So whenever you feel that you know that there is a solution and you are going to get to that solution, your entire focus is going towards that rather thinking, why is it difficult? What parts are the difficult parts? And so on.
Well, listen, I can't believe where the time has gone. It's been so fascinating hearing your story. I can't wait to follow along and see how things go. I will be contacting you mid 2026 and go, come on, how close are you to that first trial? Because that's what you said you were going to do. And to be honest with you, I've got no doubt that you'll already be going, yeah, we're there, we've done that now. So it's a fascinating journey. And I wish you every success with what you're doing. I think it's incredible what your journey's been. And, I hope that everything that you set out to do comes to fruition.
Thank you, Sharron. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk. And I want to make sure that whoever is listening, and most especially those who are just starting, juniors, that the whole point is not about bragging what happened, what you are doing. The whole point is to show and share that there are different stories. My language might not be, English is not my primary language. I came from different countries with different cultures, and everyone has a different story, and everyone's path is unique.
Yep.
And if you want to do something, the differences should not be the stopping point. The differences should be something that you can use as a weapon, actually.
Yeah.
So if you
don't let that be your barriers.
Exactly. If you are
Yep.
looking around and you don't see case like yourself, you are going to be the first one.
Yeah. Which is even more important.
Exactly. Absolutely.
That piece of advice, and we'll make sure that message gets out. Lucy, thank you so very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and continue to enjoy the sunshine. I'm not the slightest bit jealous. I'm sure we'll get some sunshine eventually, but you have a wonderful time. It's been amazing speaking to you, and I hope our paths cross again in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Sharron, and please come visit us if you need some sunshine. We'll be happy to host you here.
You'll be sorry you said that, because you won't be able to get me to leave, but
no problem.
Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye now. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.